All right, and welcome into the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast, Week 2 Reaction Edition. Tonight, we tell you everything you need to know following another wild weekend of NFL football. I'm your host, Seth Woolcock, and bringing you the injury analysis, as always, a man who has studied at places like Vanderbilt, Penn, places they don't even let me near or on the campus. Also was a former resident at Stanford, and yes, the Harvard University. It is a longtime industry colleague of mine, Dr. Deepak Chona. Great to be with you tonight, Doc.
Great to be with you too, man. That was a hell of an intro, but I don't hopefully have too disappointing of news for you today.
Let's go. That's what I like to hear. I'm also joined by a guy who vibes should be high for him. He's a fellow Steeler fan, also a fantasy football analyst with a big brain that we'll be tapping into tonight. Scott Bogman. How are we feeling today, Boggs?
And Longhorns ranked number 1, too, Sethy. It's a good day. I'm liking today. This is a solid one.
Absolutely. I appreciate you guys being here, and I appreciate everyone tuning in live with us on Sunday night, or maybe you're checking it out afterwards on YouTube or the podcast feed. Either way, we greatly appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe to the channel wherever you're listening to this program. It's the easiest way to support us here at Fantasy Pros. And let's go ahead and jump into the unfortunate injuries of today. Minnesota Vikings wide receiver Deepak, he was having a great game, 4 targets, 133 yards, and a touchdown. However, he kind of leaves the day in kind of a scary situation there, has a quad injury. Kevin O'Connell is calling it some type of injury that's going to be potentially having him day to day after this week. What's your diagnosis on it, Deepak?
Yeah, he took a direct hit to the thigh area, and they're calling it a quad contusion. And that's relatively good news in the sense that a lot of these can be played through without causing missed games. Mm-hmm. Now, the key to keep in mind, and Justin Jefferson said he's not worried about missing the next game, is that these do tend to be a little bit more swollen and a little bit more stiff the next day. So sometimes the severity does kind of worsen as the week progresses.
Okay.
I would stash a backup just in case he doesn't log a full practice, but I would expect to see Justin Jefferson at pretty much his baseline level going forward from here.
And Bogman, we've now had back-to-back weeks where Jalen Nailor has had some really good scoring opportunities, got into the end zone week 1 and week 2, had a lot of buzz around him in training camp. Is he a potential add here, you think, on the waiver wire after also having Jordan Addison down in this one?
Yeah, Naylor is a good addition to this offense, especially getting more snaps. And it seemed like Powell had won that job, but they're not throwing the ball to Powell that much. So
Yeah.
I like to see Naylor in there, and still going to be a pass heavy no matter what, because that's what KOC does. So, if Jefferson does get more stiff, as Deepak has told us, and has to miss week 3, then I think Naylor's going to be wheels up.
Okay. And after carrying the load for fantasy managers and the Detroit Lions on his back, 11 receptions, 199 yards on 19 targets, Amon-Ra St. Brown limped off the field with a leg injury. MCDC is saying that this shouldn't be a long-term situation here. Deepak, do you agree with that analysis?
Yeah, so it's a little bit reassuring in the sense that the knee bent inwards and then he wasn't able to bear weight at the very last drive of the game. And that is concerning for an MCL type mechanism. But that same mechanism also puts your ACL at risk. The good thing is that we can diagnose an ACL usually just in the locker room with your hands on the exam. So if they're saying it's not a long-term absence, it is pretty reassuring that he probably didn't tear his ACL. An MCL sprain for some players does hold them out a couple weeks, but that will kind of be determined severity-wise on an MRI probably tomorrow. So we'll know a lot more pretty soon, but I think we've avoided worst case scenario in Amon-Ra St. Brown from the comments.
Thank good. Glad to hear that. Anything fantasy managers can really do to brace for this, Bogman, because it's kind of tough. I don't feel like we're really going to be interested in the Khalif Raymonds of the world or the Tim Patricks, even if there is some missed time here from Amon-Ra.
Yeah, if there's missed time, there's not a whole lot you can do for it. That's hopefully you made a decent pickup of like Robinson on the bench for next week or something already, because this week just doesn't have a lot. And behind him it was Tim Patrick and Khalif Raymond splitting those snaps. So not there's just no replacing Amon-Ra.
Wheels up probably on JMO, though. I mean, he had another really high target volume day too, so I think we can all wrap our arms around that. Deepak,
More
I know
Laporta too.
Yeah. And Deepak, you've been shouting Jameson Williams names, I feel like, in the fantasy land for years now. So you got to be at least excited about what you've seen out of him.
Yeah, man. I mean, he came out of college with that ACL, and it's just so hard to come right back from that. So now I think he's finally at a place where he's healthy, and we're seeing what also sounds like maturity from a young guy. So let's go, JMO.
Yeah, absolutely. Sticking with some injuries here. We also had the unfortunate news this morning drop that A.J. Brown will be out on Monday night with a hamstring injury. How do you expect this one to shake out here long-term, Deepak? We've kind of been bit by this hamstring bug pretty early in the season. We had Evan Ingram have something similar pop up over the weekend, as well as in week 1, T. Higgins having this type of injury as well.
Totally. And with these late week additions, the average on them is about 2 weeks. So with that being said, his week 3 is very much at risk. And I would say you have to follow his practice reports pretty closely. Best case scenario, he logs a limited session on Wednesday, and then I would expect him to log 3 limiteds and be about a 2/3 chance to play. But there's a good chance that this lingers on, like we've seen with T. Higgins, or something relatively benign seems like it's going to be carried on just a little bit more than we thought.
Okay. All right. And I think there's really nothing we can do from a fantasy perspective here in the Eagles offense other than keep our main guys in the fold here, Devonta Smith and Saquon Barkley, Dallas Goedert as well. I don't really have the appetite. I'm a Penn State guy. You know that, Boggs, but I don't think I can go down that road for Jahan Dotson.
Maybe you're a little spurned. Let's see what he does on Monday. Let's see what he does. And he might be a priority waiver pickup because there's just not a lot right now.
Okay. All right. Let's keep it moving here with Christian McCaffrey. Really disappointing situation. He's been placed on IR dealing with that Achilles injury here, gentlemen. And it's one of those situations for fantasy managers. It's kind of a disaster all the way around. You probably drafted him number 1, number 2 overall in your redraft format. Deepak, is there a silver lining here? And when do you expect McCaffrey to be back?
Yeah, I would not call this one a silver lining in the sense that rushing him back would put his Achilles at risk for a rupture. And that's for a 28-year-old running back, pretty much a catastrophic injury. Now, the thing about these injuries is that these 4 to 6 week time frame that we've been given isn't a guaranteed fix, because he's been resting for about 6 weeks now already. And he reportedly Friday was his worst day of symptoms per Coach Shanahan. So all of that taken together, we certainly do expect that the most likely outcome is him getting better about 6 weeks from now. Probably a very, very slow ramp up, though. So I don't think you're going to be looking at a workhorse back for most of the regular season, if at all. And they're probably just trying to keep him healthy for the playoffs, given the Niners' overall situation with Mason.
With what Deepak just said here, Boggs, where do you rank Jordan Mason rest of season?
I mean, he's got to be high. He's like a borderline RB1, RB2 right now. He's been getting all of the touches. Maybe they work Garendo in more, but this is a really bad situation. Deepak, was this underreported, or do you think this happened in that Friday practice?
Yeah, I think a little bit of both. So if you look at all of the muscle strains, they're pretty much very consistently underreported in the offseason and training camp, because the teams have no incentive to give you really the truth there. And we don't have any objective data to go off of until they log real practice reports. So with that in mind, I think it was underreported, as is kind of the expectation, but he probably also is worsening, which is why they pulled him from practice and they downgraded him from limited to DNPs. So I think in that sense, it's a little bit of both. And I understand why fantasy managers are upset, but I think the Niners did what they should do. Gamesmanship, right?
Yeah. No, makes sense.
No shady business here, Kyle Shanahan and the gang are saying. Last injury of real concern that happened today during games. Cooper Kupp leaves the game with an ankle injury, was listed as doubtful pretty quickly afterwards as well. That's probably not a great sign. Deepak, would you agree?
Yeah, the video looked like at least a moderate severity high ankle mechanism, and you can kind of see the ankle twist. Somebody's weight went right on it. It's a little bit reassuring that he did try to come right back. So we'll get an MRI probably tomorrow and really know the case. But I think the other factor in play here is that it was the middle of a blowout, and just fresh off that injury at his age, it, in my eyes, doesn't make any sense to have him out there at all. So you're looking at a couple of confounding factors there. I'm not sure we can really read into it, but the video did look like a moderate severity injury.
Bogman, we know that some of these Rams wide receivers were some of the top waiver wire pickups in week one. Is there one that stands out to you if we don't have any Puka Nacua going forward, if we don't have any Cooper Kupp?
I mean, I think it's DeMarcus, right? DeMarcus Robinson has been the guy. Tyler Johnson getting more involved. I like Whittington, kind of like Puka himself.
Yeah.
Pretty talented, but also injury prone throughout his college career. So if we got the preseason guys going as the number ones in LA right now, it's just not a really good scenario for Stafford either.
Okay. And a couple that I just wanted to talk about that we don't have on our graphic here, but I think were important to note. Jaguars tight end Evan Ingram, he did injure his hamstring in warmups earlier today. He did not play. Kind of same timeline that you're thinking here, Deepak, about 2 weeks at the minimum.
Yeah, usually, I mean, that's the average. So a lot of this is really determined by when they come back to practice, and that tells us the most objective data. But yes, there would be a high risk of him missing next week.
Okay. And Bogman, if you lost Ingram, is Hunter Henry probably your first look on the waiver wire? I mean, 12 targets, 8 receptions, 109 yards. But we see this
one
every
look
year
for the Pats offense. Yeah. I mean, he looked great today. So, and they've been, obviously beat Cincinnati and stayed in this game, went into overtime and kind of really blew it. Yeah, I think Hunter Henry is the number one option here.
2 more quick ones for you, Deepak. Per Adam Schefter earlier today, Puka Nacua could miss 5 to 7 weeks with that PCL injury. Is that consistent with your data as well?
Yeah, relatively consistent. The average is 6 weeks on these re-aggravated PCLs. So you're looking at a week 6 bye for them. So I was kind of thinking a week 7 target would be the most realistic. Mm-hmm. Now, in the case that they are not doing so hot, then you have to really think about it, because the first 3 weeks of that comeback, if you come back at 6, you do have a little bit of an elevated re-injury risk. So if the Rams are really not looking good, you don't want to rush your young star player back. And so that's kind of the wild card in my eyes. But I would say that week 7 would be probably where the average player would come back.
Okay. All right. So make some plans in the intermediate. It feels like for Puka Nacua, load up on some of these depth pieces at the Rams wide receiver position. Tua Tagovailoa suffers a head injury Thursday night as well. Kind of a really scary scene there in Miami. He has a history of these where he does kind of that fencing posture there. When should redraft managers expect him back, Deepak? And what should dynasty managers also be thinking long-term, considering we have seen this before from Tua?
Yeah, so the real concern is that as you have these concussions and the fencing posture indicates basically a severe concussion. So as you have more of these, the next one is more likely and has a lower threshold to happen. And then the long-term consequence of that is we're learning more and more CTE is a real thing. And so with that in mind, it's kind of a personal decision on whether to play or retire and just avoid the risk. But they're saying he has no intention to retire, which tells me Tua's probably coming right back. Now, the last time he had this happen was 2 years ago, and it was about 4 weeks later that he came back, and I'd expect a very similar timeline. If you remember back to that concussion, that was immediately following another one. So if anything, I would think that is about the same severity, and it was 2 years ago. So you would think as much of a recovery as he was going to have, he has. So in my eyes, 4 weeks is probably the barometer that I think he's looking at, but it's very much a personal decision. And there's not really a hard line. There's just not a ton of examples since we've been tracking these that closely of somebody having repetitive, severe head trauma.
Bogman, we know you have to keep throwing out Tyreek Hill each and every week, regardless of Tua's activation or not. Where do you rank Jalen Waddle on a week-to-week basis, not knowing the matchup?
Yeah, I think wide receiver 2 to 3, depending on the matchup, is probably going to be where he is with Skylar Thompson. Should Tua come back, obviously back up on him as well. I think Skylar Thompson can work if he is the long-term guy, but he's going to be very hit or miss. We saw Richardson today be very hit or miss. These young guys that don't have a lot of starts, sometimes the game gets away from them in a certain spot. So it will be frustrating for those guys. And it's, never good to already be going to backups, but Tua really has to think long and hard about what he wants to do in the future here.
Absolutely. Well, Deepak, thank you so much for joining us tonight, man. Make sure y'all follow Deepak on socials at SportsMed Analytics, and stick around as Boggs and I will recap the games right after this.
Yeah, we're all passionate about fantasy football, obviously. But sometimes there is a little bit missing. What's missing? A team. But not your fantasy team. No, a team of like-minded, passionate fantasy football fans. And if that is not part of your everyday, FantasyPros Discord might be your answer. Chat with other fans, debate strategies, and find leagues to join. Every week, get your questions answered live in our AMA live Discord sessions. Want to know if you should start that sleeper or avoid a risky trade? Our experts, they're here to help. And if you got a question, you might even end up on a podcast. It's not just about advice, though. It's about community, with channels for every aspect of fantasy football, draft advice, waivers, props to dynasty, best ball, and a ton more. You're going to find like-minded fans just like you. So join the best fantasy team. Join Fantasy Pros on Discord at fantasypros.com/chat today. Get your questions answered and connect with fans. Don't just play fantasy football, live it with Fantasy Pros on Discord.
All right, and before we jump into the games, I do want to remind you, if you want a chance to win a free Devonta Smith signed Eagles helmet, all you have to do is head over to fantasypros.com/contest and complete the form by either A, downloading the Fantasy Pros My Playbook app, or B, leaving a review for the podcast or following us on X, Instagram, or TikTok at Fantasy Pros. The more actions you complete, the more actions or the more entries you will receive. We'll be announcing a winner right here on the podcast. So if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you click that subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications so you can be alerted when new episodes are up and you can claim your prize in the future. All right, gentlemen, and let's go ahead and continue here, Bogman, and let's go right into the 1 p.m. slate, where I hope you did not bet any favorites, because my goodness, it was an absolute mess if you were betting on favorites, starting with the Vikings, who stunned the 49ers 23-17. The stadium was rocking. Sam Darnold, rock solid again himself, I felt like. Everyone showed up from a fantasy standpoint from Minnesota. We did see a bit of more Ty Chandler here, out carrying Aaron Jones, took 8 carries for 82 yards. But aside from that, I feel like the only people who are really disappointed are the Brandon Ayuk managers once again, who he has another single-digit fantasy point performance here. Do you view Ayuk as the clear fantasy loser here, or do you think he'll be fine? We know that you and Pat Fitzmaurice have kind of been harping all offseason that the efficiency numbers could come down and harm Ayuk's production here.
Yeah, I mean, I think whenever you have a season like he had last season, to get so many yards on so few catches, that is what jumps out to you first. But this offense is relatively the same. It should be relying more on the passing game in the future with CMC down. Jordan Mason looks like a great fill-in, but obviously he can't. He doesn't have everything that CMC does. Nobody does. So maybe not even CMC anymore after this injury. We'll see. But yeah, I think Ayuk's going to be okay. I think what we're seeing is a little bit of remnants of missing training camp and not getting in on time and being behind everyone. That's why you saw Debo with 10 targets, Mesa get 20 carries. They were also down in this game. So just good work by Minnesota to cover Ayuk as well. So I'm not panicking about Ayuk next yet. Maybe next week, if he has another game, maybe we'll take a deeper look, but I'm still thinking this is a little bit of chemistry.
Okay. Any other big fantasy winners or losers from this game for you?
I mean, I like to see Ty Chandler take all these carries. I just don't know that I would read so much into it because you're trying to protect a lead against the NFC champs here. And yeah, sure, they're down some pieces, but this was a tough game even at home. So I think we got to see Ty Chandler run a little bit more than we would in a normal game.
Sure.
The snaps were still in Aaron Jones' favor, 33-19.
Okay.
So we're still, I think we're doing okay with Aaron Jones. Lost a fumble, so I think it is more hot hand than we gave it credit for, but it's still Aaron Jones' job to lose, in my opinion.
I had my buddy in one of my leagues. He has Aaron Jones, and this week he went out. He traded Trey Benson for Ty Chandler, and I kind of questioned that move just because we know Benson's going to have a lot of upside here later in the season, Boggs, but at the same time, it's not a bad idea to lock down that Minnesota backfield, and if Chandler's out there on waivers or if you can acquire him on the cheap via trade, might not be a bad idea to do so.
Work for him this week. I mean, I had a couple leagues where I started Bigsby over Ty Chandler, and Bigsby got me the fat donut getting hurt, so didn't help me.
Yes, absolutely. Moving to New England here, it took overtime for Seattle to prevail against the Patriots and preventing them from starting 2-0 in the Gerard Mayo era. Seattle wins this one 23-20. And I think we finally saw what Ryan Grubbs can do for this Seattle offense. Huge days for DK Metcalf. Huge day for JSN, Jackson Smith-Njigba as well. Metcalf, 14 targets, 10 receptions, 129 yards, and a touchdown. And then JSN, is the breakout finally here, Boggs? I hope so. Finally saw 16 targets. That is a crazy number for JSN, I feel like. 12 receptions, 117 yards. Charbonnet was serviceable as well. What's more impressive to you, how Seattle's offense performed overall, or that the Patriots running backs this season continue to be fantasy gold? Big day for Ramondre and Antonio Gibson, who rushed for 90 yards himself.
I think it's the Patriots standing games. I mean, we thought they were going to be, very, very bad again and beat Cincinnati. They're in this game, even at home. It's a tough game against Seattle. I don't think that you want Geno throwing the ball 44 times. I don't think that is the strategy that you want if you're Seattle, but it worked today, and JSN looked amazing. Metcalf got open for the big one early, and Charbonnet made it work, right? 67 snaps. I believe they had 70. So he was in almost all of them.
Wow.
So great yeoman's work here for Charbonnet. He was in there getting it done. And like you said, nice combo of Stevenson and Gibson. We would like to see a little more consistency in this receiving game. Like you mentioned before, Seth, it was Hunter Henry and Hunter Henry and Hunter Henry. And then Polk got his first touchdown, but he had 2 catches. Osborne had 51 snaps. DeMario had 38 snaps. They just, can't seem to get the ball out to anybody but Hunter Henry right now. So it worked in this game, but the more the Patriots become one-dimensional, the less it's going to work. So we'll see how it goes moving forward. It's working right now. But I think when Ken Walker is back up, you're going to see way fewer pass attempts for Geno. Hopefully that's this week.
Yeah. KJ Osborne always on that all cardio team. That guy is out there running routes on every single play, Pogs. It just never gets.
My man blocks.
He does.
Blocks.
He does. That'll get you paid in the NFL for sure. Next we go to Washington and the home of the poop pipes, where Jane Daniels leads a game-winning drive to beat the Giants 21-18. A more modest day for the rookie, about 13.5 fantasy points if you're playing in 4-point per passing touchdown leagues. But Brian Robinson was the storyline for me in this one. Continues to dominate on on the ground, 17 attempts, 133 yards, and could have been a much bigger day if we didn't have all these false starts. Every time the Commanders got inside the 10, it backed them right back out of it. Meanwhile, though, before we talk about the Giants, is it time to hit the panic button on Terry McLaurin? 8 targets, that was great to see. 6 receptions, awesome. 22 yards. I feel like the ADOT is just not there right now. He's running very close to the line of scrimmage. I'm panicked. This is the first year in forever I've been back on Terry McLaurin since his rookie season, and I think I might have overpaid for him.
I think we got 2 decent games in a row from the Giants secondary, which is not something that we can say very often. So also, Jaden Daniels' second start in the NFL, at least he was looking Terry McLaurin's way. So I'm not ready to hit the panic button quite yet on many guys, right? Week 3, we see 3 bad weeks of production. Then I think it's worse. Now, are you looking at him versus somebody else in a flex spot?
Yeah.
More than fair. I understand that, but I'm not, we're not hitting the panic button on Jaden Daniels. I love this 29 attempts, getting better, but B-Rob was a success story today. And then, T-Mac still had 65 snaps and the most routes run by 13 over anybody else here. So I'm really not worried about T-Mac at all. B-Rob looks excellent. They're mixing in him and Eckler well, at least they did in this game, but this was an insane time of possession game. I believe it was like 36 to 23 and change, something like that, but it was big in Washington's favor here. So not a surprise to see both guys get involved and look good.
Yeah, and still, even though the Giants might have not possessed the ball for very long in this game, they still had really adequate days from their skill position players. Malik Neighbors, 18 targets, 10 receptions, 121 yards, and 1 touchdown for the number 1 first-round pick for the New York Giants. Also, we got an anytime TD catch from my guy, Wan'Dale Robinson. Let's go. I was hyped about that one. I think I got that about 3-1 odds. And then Devin Singletary, 14.5 PPR points as well. So there's life, like there's life in this Giants offense. You got to feel good about at least these 3 players moving forward in some semblance, right, Boggs?
Yeah, I mean, those are the only 3 you can start, though, right? Like maybe if you're having tight end problems because Theo Johnson is getting so many snaps, maybe he'll get involved at some point, but it's not happening right now. It was the big targets for Wan'Dale. He got the score this week. This is exactly what we expected from Malik going into the year. Was nobody else is on this team. He's going to get peppered with targets. 18 today. I think only Amonra with 20 had more. So this is what we should be seeing from Malik Neighbors. This should be the game plan for the Giants moving forward because he is their guy.
Okay, let's flip over to the game that I probably watched the least of. Chargers 26, Carolina 3. The highlights include the biggest day of young Quentin Johnston's career, 5 receptions, 51 yards, 2 touchdowns on just 6 targets. And then J.K. Dobbins looks like he's the real deal, man. I mean, I don't know what him and Aaron Rodgers have been doing that Kirk Cousins has not been, but the Achilles looks good, my man. 130 plus yards in back-to-back games, probably up there for the league lead in rushing yards, Boggs. How do you feel about him and this entire Chargers offense moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, this was a perfect game for the Chargers, and really their first 2 have been perfectly they've gone perfectly to their game plan. It's what they want to do is run the ball, pass when you have to, and play solid defense. That is the name of Jim Harbaugh's game right here. And this worked perfectly because Carolina is unbelievably miserable. They're so bad on both sides of the ball. I mean, at least the defense played a little better today, but they got nothing on offense right now with Bryce Young. But it is great to see Quentin Johnston go out there and get some touchdowns. Disappointing day for McConkey managers
here.
Happen. Yeah, but also like how many games are the Chargers going to get to go exactly their way? Right. Yeah, that's the thing. So I'm not worried about McConkey, even Palmer. I'm not really sweating. I'm sweating everything in Carolina, Seth. It all looks bad.
Can you start anyone? That's the question here, Boggs. I mean, bad day for Deontay Johnson. Adam Thielen isn't doing Adam Thielen things out there. We saw Jonathan Mingo, I think, more in this game than we wanted to because Xavier Legette last week led the team in receiving, which was cool. Chuba Hubbard, the only Carolina player in double-digit PPR points, 11.6. Can you start him or anyone moving forward, Boggs?
I mean, in a deep league, Chuba is probably it. You're not starting Bryce. You can't start DJ until you see Bryce look good. I mean, Thielen was out there for more snaps. DJ ran the most routes, 26. So I'm still, because I'm in some deep leagues, I still have maybe some spots where I have to run DJ out, but I want them to start Andy Dalton now that I have him, because Bryce Young just doesn't have it right now. And maybe he's never going to have it again, but it's going to take sitting and learning because it's not working right now for him. So wheels up on the red rifle for me. I hope they make that move. I doubt it,
though, right? Yeah, like you
I
can't
doubt
bench
it.
the franchise quarterback that you paid all that to get up there.
You
And
traded
right?
all that stuff for, but
Yeah.
also you have a whole rest of your team to worry about. And if you are not producing anything on offense at all, then you're gonna ruin the whole locker room morale if you don't switch away from him. So how much longer can we do it, I guess, is the question. So you can't, I mean, maybe 2 more games like this before you have to sit down BY, because it's just not working right now.
Start your Raiders in week 3. That's all I got to say.
Yes.
They'll be playing the Panthers, my friend. Let's move to Dallas, where the Cowboys are blown up at home, losing 44-19 to the New Orleans Saints. It looks like this Clint Kubiak offense is working very well compared to the dinosaur that Pete Carmichael is rolling out the last couple of years. Have now scored 40-plus points in back-to-back weeks, averaging over 400 yards of offense per game as well. Aside from the Chris Olave manager, you got to be thrilled with what's happening down there in New Orleans, right?
Yeah, it all looks good. Kubiak has worked everything here. And I think, coming off of last week, we just weren't sure, like, we just talked about how bad Carolina is on both sides, right? And was this more of, because we've seen New Orleans look great at home early in the season and then kind of fade off when it gets later in the season. They got a lot of older guys here. They look strong. They look strong in that game against Carolina. They look strong in this game on the road against Dallas. Obviously, a much tougher opponent. Maybe Dallas is still getting it rolling with all of their drama from the offseason, but this looked outstanding from the Saints. Kamara looks like an RB1 moving forward.
Steal the draft.
Yeah, just really, push down. And Shaheed making big plays in 2 straight games is enormous. Olave getting back to normal was great. So, liking what we're seeing from the Saints for sure.
I feel like Shaheed and Carr have to be like getting beers after hours together or something, because like there's something there, man. There's something there with that connection.
Chemistry.
And
sticking around, being around for a long time. You build the chemistry, and it's been great. Foster Moreau, too, had a lot of snaps. Didn't see a catch in this game. I mean, I think the tight end situation is going to be fluid. Sometimes it's going to be Taysom, sometimes it's going to be Jawan, but Foster is leading those guys in snaps. So 47 for him, 28 for Taysom, 24 for Jawan. So keep your eye on Foster Moreau in tight end premium leagues or 2 tight end leagues. I have one of those in Pentathlon. So just, obviously didn't do much here, but he's getting work. So keep those eyes peeled.
Taysom's also banged up after this one a little bit too. So I like the call out there on Foster for you. Meanwhile, in Dallas, it's kind of starting to feel like we can only really trust Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb. There was a lot of hype on the internet around Brandon Cooks potentially being a play this week. Didn't really work out for managers. 2 receptions, 19 yards. Rico Dowdle, Zeke Elliott, they're kind of splitting work here. We even saw some Deuce Vaughn in this one as well. So, I mean, I feel like if you're forced to play one of these guys in a 14-team league or something like that, you can plug them in. But I don't have confidence really in anyone on this Dallas Cowboys team aside from CD, aside from Dak Prescott.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. And, Tolbert looked great this week, 9 targets, 6 catches, 82 yards, but Ferguson was down. So that's a big chunk of it. Cooks only 2 for 19 in this one. He had the big game last week. So like you said, the Cowboys offense looking a little giantsy, obviously way better than, Dak is way better than Daniel Jones, but who are you starting? It's Dak, it's CD, and it's Ferguson when he's wheels up. I don't want to start Dowdle. I don't want to start Zeke if I can avoid it most weeks, because they're just right now just straight up splitting. So it's just not a good situation either way. I still think Dowdle is going to be the guy moving forward. I think Zeke is going to sink. He looked bad last season, but it's a coin flip right now. It just doesn't look very good at all in that scenario.
Dallas will get Baltimore in week 3, so kind of a tough matchup. I think it's a stay away aside from CD and Dak there. And then also get ready for some fireworks here in New Orleans in week 3. Philadelphia comes to town. So, I mean, take the over. I don't know what the line's going to be, but it's going to be very, very high there, I think. Let's go to Lambeau Field, where I lost a lot of money. I'm going to be honest. I woke up, I woke up and I just hammered the Colts money line. I thought there's no way Malik Willis can get this done. And yeah, the Packers, they upset the Colts 16-10 at home. Whether you hammered the Colts money line like I did, or you drafted Michael Pittman Jr. like I did as well, it was very frustrating to watch this game. Felt like they could only kind of get it going with Jonathan Taylor on the ground. Yet on that critical third down play, they're in opponent territory there. They put the backup in. They run a Bush League speed option play, and that cost them the game, in my opinion. So what are your fantasy takeaways here, other than that the Colts have the worst rushing defense in the freaking league? I mean, the Packers, we knew what they were going to do.
Buckner got hurt. Yeah, Buckner got hurt in this game too. So, yeah, I mean, look, A-Rich 2 weeks in a row has not looked good. He picked it up a little bit at the end, ended up with over 200 yards passing after just an abysmal start where he couldn't hit his targets at all. JT got rolling a little bit in the second half, but yeah, this offense is stunted. It seems a little bit right now. Tough road game against Green Bay, but the plan was limit Malik Willis's passing opportunities, give him easy throws. He was 12 for 14 because of it. Let him run, but hand that ball to Josh Jacobs a million times. That's why he got 30 carries. Did lose a fumble, but how can you blame him after 30 carries? Would love to have seen more Marshawn Lloyd, but he left, after all that work to get back, left hurt again in that game. And yeah, it was just, to me, this game was really more about the inefficiency of the Colts offense and how, like you said, they weren't getting the ball to Pittman. They're not getting the ball out fast enough. Pierce scored another touchdown. He should not be one of their first looks. No. Mitchell, again, A-Rich just not having a lot passing right now is definitely hamstringing him. And we all saw the upside, but it is going to be inconsistent play. It is still his first year starting. So I'm a little bit lower than consensus, but not much. I mean, we expect a lot from A-Rich, and we're not getting any of it yet.
I'm still a believer. I'm still a believer. I think this is look yourself in the mirror, Shane Steichen, see where you went wrong, see where A-Rich went wrong, and adjust the offense around it. We know Steichen is one of the best play callers in the league. So I think he might be a sneaky buy low right now, honestly. And speaking of buy low, you can actually use our trade analyzer at fantasypros.com/myplaybook or on the FantasyPros Fantasy Football My Playbook app to instantly evaluate how any trade will affect your team the rest of the week, the rest of the season, and even in dynasty formats as well. So keep an eye out for that. Make sure you guys are checking out our trade analyzer over there. Keeping it moving to Jacksonville here, where the Jags fall to 0-2 after losing to the Browns 18-13. Extremely disappointing for almost every fantasy football player in this matchup. Aside from Travis Etienne, Brian Thomas Jr. caught a couple long bombs. Jerry Jeudy, somewhat serviceable. But Bogman, who do you trust less moving forward? Christian Kirk, 1 reception, -1 yard, or a guy, Amari Cooper, 8 targets once again, 3 receptions, 11 yards. I mean, I'm pulling my hair out over here. I got way too much Amari.
Yeah, I understand that. And that's, I think we all saw Watson look so bad week 1, and we were wondering, is he going to go down, and are they going to make this Jameis Winston switch? Doesn't look like it, right? Stefanski said, we're going to stick with Watson. He looked better, but Cooper didn't, 3 catches for 11 yards. He still did lead in snaps at 63, but and then they sliced up this backfield between Foreman and Ford, and then it was going to be 3-headed with Strong and the Strong left. So just a nasty game all the way around for everybody here. Trevor Lawrence does not look good. I don't know if this is going to get much better, man. Trevor Lawrence does not look good. I feel like they need to let him run the ball a little bit more, use all of his tools in the toolbox, but they're just not doing it. He did run, what was it, twice, and he had 45 yards. He broke a big one.
Okay.
So, but that is he had more rushing yards his senior year than Justin Fields did. So, they need to let him run. I don't know why they keep hamstringing him. Bigsby went down, so ETN back to the carries. Dearness Johnson, Christian Kirk. I was worried about this coming into the season. Like if Brian Thomas is as good as we thought, and he looks good already, he's quickly becoming the number one target for Trevor Lawrence. Then Kirk is losing a lot, and this was without Evan Ingram either.
Yeah.
So just not a good look from either one of these offenses. They are concerning moving forward.
Yeah, I know Andrew Erickson, our guy over here. He was super high on Amari Cooper, spouting that all over the internet. So if you want,
I got a league. I have in flex. I've got Cooper, McLaurin, and Pittman. Those are my 3 starters. Now, luckily, I have Achane and Alvin Kamara, and like I have good other pieces as well. But my wide receivers are hurting in that.
Well, if you want to make fun of Bogman for his team, or if you want to make fun of Andrew Erickson for his Amari Cooper call that he put out there on the interweb, you should join our Fantasy Pros Discord community. It's awesome over there. You can chat with other fans and get access to exclusive AMAs that wind up on our podcast feed. We've got a new schedule for the rest of the season over there in the Fantasy Pros Discord community. Joe, the Welsh, and Boggs, that's you, Boggs, Mondays, 2 p.m. Eastern time. And then the Welsh and Erickson are on at Thursday, 2 Eastern time as well. And then Fitz and Boggs at 5 Eastern time on the 3rd Tuesday of each month as well. So come get your questions answered and be on the show at fantasypros.com/chat. All right. And as we keep it moving here in the Music City, no chairs were thrown off rooftops to my knowledge, except maybe by the Breece Hall fantasy managers, because rookie Braylon Allen, oh, you know him, you love him, the former Wisconsin Badger. He vultures not one, but 2 touchdowns from Breece Hall here. Overall, it feels like this Nathaniel Hackett offense, though, is kind of a bit tough to trust in fantasy, aside from Hall, really, just because how slow-paced it is, which I don't think it's a surprise to you. It's not a surprise to me. Meanwhile, Brian Callahan's offense for the Titans looks somewhat better here. I felt like in week 2, 2 touchdowns for Calvin Ridley, a 15-point performance from Tony Pollard as well, Boggs.
Yeah, I mean, it was nice to see Pollard get out there. Spears did go down, though, and we had at halftime, there were more snaps for Spears than there were for Pollard. So I was getting a little concerned about that. But then, Spears rolled his ankle and Pollard gets the carry. So that was great. Calvin Ridley also with a huge play. Nuke is just working back so slow. I just don't know how trustable he's going to be.
Can you drop him? Are you dropping him, or are you holding him?
I suggested somebody to drop him today because they had AJ Brown go out, and it was like, do I start Nuke or do I drop him and pick up Mooney? And I said, I think I would pick up Mooney or Dotson if someone's on the wire. I just don't know how trustable Nuke is right now. So he's Nuke. If he gets back and he gets all those snaps, then great.
What do you have, like 29 or so? Like
it was very low. Yeah, it was Ridley for 54, Boyd for 30, Burks for 33, Hopkins with 29. So he was 4th among wide receivers there. So he's just not 100%. So we knew that going in. It's not a surprise that they were going to ease him back in, but he's also an age concern at this point in his career. So, at least Will Levis looked better in the second half, because that was starting to look like Mason Rudolph time there as well. So,
early.
It sucks that Braylon Allen's, vultured those 2 scores, but you still got a lot of usage out of Breece, 21 touches, over 100 yards. He did get his receiving touchdown as well. So good to see. Garrett Wilson get 6 targets and lead in targets again as well. So, again, A-Rod missed a little time. Not a lot of preseason anymore. So let's see these guys. I'm not, hitting the panic button on A-Rod yet. It doesn't look good. I'd rather look good than bad. These guys have looked bad, but it's still a little too early to really panic about too many guys. Hopkins, though, that is a guy that I do worry about.
Hitting eject on D-Hop there is Boggs. Another underdog won in this earlier slate as the Bucs beat the Lions 20-16. Big day for Chris Godwin, who I think caught the first 7 passes from Baker Mayfield. And then I don't know if he caught another one. Overall, though, kind of a disappointing day from the Tampa Bay weapons. It's supposed to be a really high-scoring game. The over didn't even come close to hitting in this one. Meanwhile, everyone did show up from the Lions from a fantasy perspective, aside from the tight end there. In Sam Laporta, the consensus 101 tight end. Goff threw the ball, though, 55 times, met plenty of targets for Gibbs, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams. So only Laporta there being left out yet again. Bogman, are you panicking on him or any of these Tampa Bay options that underperformed in week 2?
No, this one was a weird, just huge time of possession difference, 33-26 in favor of Detroit. And that's, Goff had 55 pass attempts
Yeah,
here.
don't
So
see that much.
yeah, that's not something you're going to see in a loss, by the way, too. And
Right,
I
right.
mean, I guess you see them more in losses, but a low scoring loss to have 55 attempts was weird.
Mhm, mhm.
Gibbs and Monty are I think it's exactly what we thought before the season started. Monty has the touchdowns, which is a little annoying, but Amon with the 20 targets. Jameson's the guy. I think Laporte is going to be okay. Maybe we do have to take him out of this tight end one overall conversation because Jameson has been so involved recently. He's still very good, though. He's still in that upper echelon of tight end. So if you want to take him out as the number one on a week-to-week basis, completely understandable. And look, Chris Godwin got all his receptions because I bet on Mike Evans to hit the over and to be my 100-yard call. I also thought Baker would be over 300
Yeah.
because I didn't think this time of possession would be split, and then the Bucs would be up and running the ball late. Rashad White going out and coming back in was a little tricky. Bucky Irving, that is getting a little more muddy. Yeah, I
Yep.
won't sit here and tell you that I think Bucky's going to take the job quite yet, but it's getting muddy. It's getting murky. So if you wanted to trade Rashad now, I don't think I would hate it, depending on what you got back. So I'm not selling him too low. It would be 85 cents to 90 cents on the dollar, but I don't hate the idea of it if someone is looking to buy him right now.
Would you trade Laporta for Brock Bowers right now?
Ooh, don't ask me that, Seth. Come on, man. You know what? I don't hate it. I'll say that.
It's
I'll
crazy. We're 2 weeks in, but this is like a real conversation I think
probably
we need
too
to have.
early, but yeah, I don't hate it. Brock Bowers is a stud. He is
Yeah.
an absolute stud.
Let's talk about his team as well here, Boggs. I can't remember if it was you, Welsh, or someone on the Betting Pros NFL show this week said they like the Raiders to possibly pull off this upset in
Was
Baltimore.
Amir Welsh. We had the Ravens in our survivor, so we get 2 strikes in that one, thank
Okay.
God.
All
But
right.
that wrecked us.
I'll give that one to Terrell. Maybe we'll throw Terrell a bone. Possibly, maybe it was him calling that one out. Either way, though, Gardner Minshew gets another win in Baltimore, back-to-back years for him, winning 26-23 here. More big performances from the aforementioned Brock Bowers and Devontae Adams. Not so much for the Ravens, though. Although Derrick Henry and Zay Flowers both found pay dirt in this one. What are the fantasy takeaways for you, Bogman?
I mean, just how terrible this run game in Vegas looks is my biggest thing. I mean, sure, they came back and won,
Yep.
and it was great. Like you said, Bowers, great game. Devontae returning to
Yeah.
vintage Devontae. And then on the Ravens side in the receiving game, right, back to Zay, back to Mark Andrews over Isaiah Likely. That was a crazy week 1 thing. They were in, I believe they were in 21, just way less. So Likely didn't see the field nearly as much. It was 41 snaps to 32. So not
wow.
as much, but only 18 routes run for Likely to 28 for Mark Andrews in week 2. So that got a little bit back more to normal. The split, Justice Hill had more snaps than Derrick Henry, 35-30, but once they got up, they started running Henry. They thought that game was over, and then here come the Raiders storming back late. So just Zamir White looked bad, but he had 40 snaps to Madison's 14. Now Madison got the touchdown, which is super annoying if you're rostering Zamir White, but that situation is just a little bit uglier than we thought. And because it's been bad, Brock Bowers has been awesome in this receiving game, has been awesome. And Minshew Mania, the Ravens lose, Seth. You hate to see it, don't you? Hate to see it.
They start out 0-2. The Steelers are 2-0. I feel like we might be in a different universe, but it feels very good. And, it's the thing with Gardner Minshew that he doesn't get enough credit for is he's a great fantasy quarterback for his receiving options. Like Michael Pittman last year was really good because he kept locking on to him. If you remember DJ Chark's very early in his career as well, it felt like Minshew just kept locking on to him. And he's kind of doing the same thing here with Bowers and Devontae as well. So, yeah, I like it quite a bit. And hopefully Baltimore can start out 0-3 as they head to Dallas here next week.
Uncle Rico, man. Uncle Rico, Gardner Minshew. He just he is the Energizer bunny of staying alive and keeping this job and keeping his team in games. Just didn't work out last week against the Chargers, but to go into Baltimore and pull off this upset win late was pretty awesome to see.
What would you sell Zamir White for right now? Like, obviously, you're getting pennies on the dollar from what you drafted him at, but Like, is there an option out there? Like, if someone said, "Hey, I'll give you Charbonnet" or something like that, would you take a Sharp?
Oh, I don't hate that type of deal, but I still do think Zamir is the guy. I think it is hot hand, right? You might even see Dylan Lobby up next week, just to get him a look.
New
We'll
Hampshire's
see.
boy.
I hope, fingers crossed. I
Yeah.
have a lot of shares of him in these deeper leagues. I'm wanting him to pay off in, but I think it's Amir's job. I think they went to Madison last week because Amir fumbled. And I think it's going to be the hot hand thing. And neither one of them were hot today.
All right, we got 3 more games to get to that were the late afternoon slate. The Cardinals come in and absolutely whop the Rams 41-10. It was a great sight, especially if you're a Kyler Murray fantasy manager. 3 touchdowns for the kid. Also, 59 rushing yards on 5 carries. They were unstoppable early. We saw a couple big touchdowns to Marvin Harrison Jr. I think we can take him off the panic worry meter that we maybe had him on last week. 130 yards, 2 touchdowns for him. And man, the Rams, tough sledding once again here. We kind of touched on it earlier with Deepak, but Cooper Kupp goes out of this one, and now we have Demarcus Robinson. If you want a Whittington or a Tyler Johnson share, or you want to really go back in the vault, Tutu Atwell still hanging around 2 Boggs.
Yeah, it's gonna be a different look, especially if Cooper Kupp can't play next week. And what it really affects is Kyren Williams. Kyren Williams last season, the fewest stacked boxes in the NFL. I believe it was like under 5%. It was not very high at all, which gave him the room to run. Well, you're not going to have that if there's not these deep threats. So I think next week it may be, let's try to take the top off early, regardless of who's there. I think Tutu will get some shots maybe early, and he may look like a week 3 guy if Cooper Kupp is down, to try to move those linebackers an extra step or 2 back to give Kyren Williams his normal running room. So it's not a good situation in LA with these weapons getting hurt, the problems on the offensive line, and the way the Cardinals defense looked against them this week. And that defense is still the weak point, right? Losing Aaron Donald hurts. The secondary is not great. We saw Marvin Harrison, the rookie, dust them. So it's not a good look right now for the Rams. They just seem to be, they were in that game, almost beat Detroit on the road in week 1, looking good and all that, but a couple injuries later, and it is looking real bad.
If I have one piece of advice, and I would love to hear your thoughts, maybe with what the snap counts were, but could we maybe see more Blake Corum going forward? Because we saw 8 carries for 28 yards from Corum, and like you said, like Kyren Williams, very ineffective today. 12 rushing attempts, 25 yards. That's about a two average or so yards per carry there. Blake Corum not a ton better, but 28 yards on those 8 attempts. So is there any shot that maybe we see the Rams go to a more run heavy approach? They got the 49ers next weekend.
I mean, maybe, but you don't want to run into the teeth of the Niners defense. We know that. And I mean, what did Corum have? 8 carries. He also had 8 snaps to 41. McVay is a 1 RB dude. He goes with this guy. That's his guy. He comes out when he feels like he needs
then
to.
Why draft him? Come on, why draft him then? And why make me draft him in Dynasty? Because you drafted him.
Yeah, well, I mean, you like the depth and you can use them in punt returns and stuff like that. But, maybe, and like you said, maybe we get a different look because these guys are down. Maybe it is a more run heavy approach from McVay and the Rams. It probably needs to be, but how much more? Just not enough to really make him a viable option right now. So if we see a change, it changes in the future, but I can't recommend it until I see it.
Okay, let's talk about something you can recommend. Being a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, it feels pretty good right now, all alone up here at the top of the AFC North right now, Bogman. 13-6 over the Denver Broncos here. Justin Fields hasn't looked outstanding, but he looks serviceable, man, and I really hope they stick with him here. Not just because I'm not a huge Russell Wilson fan, but I just like the way the offense kind of moves with him. It feels like he can make the easy completions to the boundary. It feels like he can run and scramble and get those first downs when needed as well. And kind of left a lot on the table here. We saw the big pass to Pickens called back as well. So Justin Fields only finishes with 117 yards and a touchdown, but he had another one taken off the board to our guy George Pickens as well. So your thoughts on the Steelers here, and the shambles that were left here with Bo Nix and this depleted Denver Broncos offense.
I mean, the Denver offense, first off, is having the same type of issues that Carolina is, a little bit better. Bo Nix had them in the red zone twice, threw one pick, couldn't convert the second time, right? So just not outstanding from what we saw from Nix, not getting the ball to Cortland Sutton. Joey Porter Jr. becoming a problem for that number one target, though. Drake London, not a good week last week. Cortland Sutton, not a good week this week. The only good completion they had was to Josh Reynolds. But this is more about, I feel like, the Denver offense and just how bad Bo Nix is right now. So we'll see if they make a move. But again, this is why you typically don't start these guys in week one if they're a little bit behind, is because you ruin their confidence when you yank them out of there when they look so bad after the first 2 weeks. So, we'll see what they do moving forward. I do expect them to stick with Bo Nix because Sean Payton is hard-headed, and I don't expect him to make a change very swiftly here. But this backfield looks bad. Cortland Sutton's not getting the ball. I don't know who you can start from Denver moving forward. And with Pittsburgh, I mean, Najee and Warren are the guys here, Seth, but I'm not going to get excited about Fields. He's still getting sacked on third downs. We're still having too many penalties, and I love Pickens. Like you said, that's the one takeaway I say with all those penalties was Pickens should have had a much bigger game, but he's the only wide receiver you can start. I think Pat Freiermuth is a dicey start on a week-to-week basis. We saw Darnell Washington get the touchdown this week as well. So, Fields is better than Russell, but it's still not great in Pittsburgh on offense.
All right, let's round it out here with what some are calling already the game of the year: 26 Chiefs, 25 Bengals. And man, was this like a roller coaster ride? We had interceptions going back and forth throughout the day, penalties being thrown, maybe questionable at times. It's kind of how it always seems to end up with the Chiefs. But either way here, a lot of questions we're kind of left with, I feel like, a little bit here, Bobby, specifically on the Chiefs side, where Xavier Worthy, kind of a disappointing game. I think we always knew he was going to be a boom-bust fantasy asset, specifically here earlier in the year. But we got news, Marquise Brown likely out for the rest of the regular season with that injury that he's trying to come back from. And then Travis Kelce, 1 reception, 5 yards. I mean, I don't want to say it, but I think maybe he's my buy low of the week. I know I was shouting, scrape Blake Corum for pennies, but do you like Kelce? Like, do you think he can come back here? Like, I just think it's some weird games, and like the Bengals have played them enough. They know to just bracket the heck out of Travis Kelce.
Yeah, I'm not too panicky on Kelce. I mean, it sucks. You don't want this guy to look as bad as he has the first 2 weeks. But I expect him to be better moving forward. Same thing with Worthy. Worthy is going to be inconsistent. He's going to be boomer bust. It's going to be Pacheco, Rashee Rice, and Kelce. Like those are the three that should be the consistent. With Worthy, hopefully he's your third. Hopefully he's your flex. Hopefully he's not a guy that you're depending on a week-to-week basis. He's kind of your boomer bust. If you need a more high floor option, I would suggest rostering one, right? Like have that high floor option so is this supposed to be a week where I'm going to compete with the guy I'm playing against, the person I'm playing against? Should it be that I put in this boomer bust guy, or do I need the high floor guy, right? So, and he's a rookie, all the cliches, tropes, whatever you want to say about him. So, I'm not worried about Kelce. I'll be worried next week. Again, 3 weeks, 2 weeks, I think can be a trend. 3 weeks is definitely a trend. So let's see what he does next week. We'll worry about it then. But I'm with you, buy low for sure right now on him. It's still Zach Moss in Cincinnati, 12 rushes for 34 yards. I haven't seen the snap difference because that game was not over when we came on. But Chase Brown only 4 for 31. Gesicki looked outstanding. Again, another tight end that you can pick up. 9 targets, a bunch of targets last week. Remember, he had the touchdown taken off the board. 7 for 91. He was outstanding. Chase, I'm not worried about Chase. I think this will get better. The illness last week, the down play this week, I get it. I get people are worried. I just, you're not benching him. You're not trading him for pennies on the dollar. So you just kind of have to roll with it. If it continues in this way, you can think about benching him, but he's your first round pick. You're not doing anything.
What about Yosivas? 2 touchdowns for him on the day, only 2 receptions for 7 yards, but he seems like a guy specifically in the red zone that Joe Burrow is trusting right now.
where was this last week is what I want to know when I had him in DFS. But look, this is great. T. Higgins is down. Hopefully he's back this week, but it's good to see these guys play better behind him. Josevich is a great option. He's a guy that developed a little bit last year and can be a waiver wire pickup should T. Higgins be down. I think Higgins is going to be back this week. So, maybe pump the air brakes on that. But like we said, not the greatest of waiver wire weeks.
Are you cutting Chase Brown? Because you know me.
You
don't
can't.
tell.
I
Don't tell Pat
to.
that. Please don't tell Pat that.
I haven't. I have him in like 3 or 4 spots. I haven't
Yeah.
done it yet, right?
Yeah.
Because look, I still think Zach Moss he's the lead back now. It didn't look great here. He was fine, but didn't get the opportunities. He's gonna get hurt. He always gets hurt. So, I'm at least handcuffing. I'm trying to, if I roster Zach Moss, if somebody drops Chase Brown, look for that. But if you're 0-2 and looking at the end of your bench and you just need options that are viable to play on an every week basis, Chase Brown is very cuttable. If you have the roster space to sit him and wait, great. But if you don't, get rid of him.
What about Joe Burrow? Do you keep rolling him out as your QB1, or do you pick up someone if there's a Fields out there, there's a Baker Mayfield, a Goff? Like are you streaming? Because it's just hard. It's hard, man. It feels like every single season it's a slow start from our guy Joey B.
Yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic still about Joe Burrow. The weapons are still very good. The running game is less than it was with Joe Mixon. So I'm still on the side of Joe Burrow. And we did hear Deepak and other people talk about this, and Joe Burrow himself say the risk is expected to get better as the season goes on. Hopefully we see that pair with improved play from Joe Burrow. The Chiefs are a tough matchup, so I don't want to hit the panic button too early in the season on Joey B, because I was big on him coming in. So listen, if it's not going to work, it's not going to work, and I will take the L, but I'm not hitting the panic button quite yet on him either. We need to do the Aaron Rodgers a little bit early in the season and relax just a little bit, but there are moves to be made.
Okay, that's our guy Scott Bogman, always preaching a little bit of patience here for the young wily guys like myself here on the program. I greatly appreciate you and your analysis as always, Scott Bogman. And that'll do it for us tonight on the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. Until next time, make sure you like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel and podcast feed to support us. Plus, download the My Playbook app as well. For Scott Bogman, I'm Seth Woolcock. Thanks so much for watching. Take care, y'all. We'll see you.
See you.